Hey everybody, movie review next door here, and I'm back with another review. And this time I'm finishing out the Nightmare on Elm Street series and my 500 subscriber special before the stream that I want to do with A Nightmare on Elm Street. This is a 2010 horror fantasy film, uh, directed by Samuel Bayer, and it stars Rooney Mara, Kyle Gallner, Katie Cassidy, Thomas Dekker, Kellen Lutz, Clancy Brown, Connie Britton, and Jackie Earle Haley. In this film, uh, the film that brings back horror icon Freddy Krueger as a darker and more sinister character than ever before. While Freddy's on the prowl, a group of teenagers being stalked soon learn that they all have a common factor making them targets for this twisted killer. So, Hmm. what did I think of A Nightmare on Elm Street? So, I don't think this is like one of the worst things you can watch, but it's not a good film. I don't think it's a good film at all. There are certain things I'm fine with in it, but overall it was boring and really fucked up a lot of stuff in the backstory. And again, it's going to have to be a spoiler review so I can talk about those things. But let me get to the cast. Rooney Mara plays Nancy Holbrook. Her name's been changed from Thompson to Holbrook for some reason. Rooney Mara is just looks tired in this film, even in the scenes before she's supposed to be tired, so it's not even method acting or anything. She doesn't seem interested in what's going on, and I've seen her give good performances. Also, apparently, she's really good in the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo remake, but I haven't seen that, so I can't confirm. I've definitely seen her in something, but uh, let me see. I mean, I guess she was technically in Urban Legends Bloody Mary, but she's barely in it. But yeah. Here she seems very bored and annoyed all the time. So yeah, definitely not what I'd call a great performance. Sorry, my hair keeps getting in the way. Kyle Goffner plays Quentin Smith, who's basically Johnny Depp's character from the first film. Kinda not. Um, he's okay. I've seen Kyle Gallner give much better performances than this, but here it's just he's not that good. Uh, Katie Cassidy plays Chris Fowles, who's basically Tina. Um, so you have Nancy's name, but you don't keep Tina. Uh, this film does kind of the same thing that the first film did, where it kind of made Tina out to be the main character, but then she dies. Katie Cassidy, I think, did a good enough job. I didn't mind her acting. She could actually cry. She could actually emote. She seemed to be taking the movie seriously. And I mean, I haven't personally seen her in a lot. Apparently, she was in Taken, and When a Stranger Calls, Xmas, Black Christmas remake. But yeah. Uh, Thomas Dekker plays Jesse Braun, who's basically Rod from the first film. Um, I think he's okay, but he's also kind of just playing a stereotypical like kind of jock character. Or not jock, but like kind of a bad boy as well, like Rod, but at least Rod was somewhat likable and you were like feeling bad for him. Uh, Jesse is just kind of whatever. Kellen Lutz plays Dean Russell, who's a friend of theirs. He's the first to die. He doesn't really get to do much. He's literally in the first scene and that's it. And he's somehow credited. I guess because Kellen Lutz was known around this time for, I guess, the Twilight movies. He was in those, I guess. Um, Clancy Brown plays Alan Smith, who's Quentin's dad. I like Clancy Brown. He doesn't do a lot, but it's cool to see him. Connie Britton plays Gwen Holbrook, who is Nancy's mother. Uh, I like Connie Britton, but she doesn't really do much here. And Jackie Earle Haley as Freddy Krueger is one of my biggest issues with this film. I don't like him as Freddy Krueger at all. I mean, uh, let me just start that off as my first point. Jackie Earle Haley, I like as an actor. I've liked him in stuff. I liked him in Watchmen. Um, I didn't mind him in London Has Fallen. I think I remember him being in it. Uh, but like in this, I just don't think he fits at all. He doesn't work as the character. He's okay. This film, the summary I read is talking about this being a return to the darker, harder edged Freddy. That's a lie because so much of this movie kind of spits in the face of what the first did for the most part. Because a little bit of my issue with the first film is the ending gets a bit too goofy. It's like, oh, they wanted to have like a bunch of traps or whatever, and the ending is kind of messy. But at least the characters were likable up to that or interesting. Um, Here they really aren't. And they try to, well, Freddy is a big part of that. Robert Englund could be creepy in the first few. Jackie Earle Haley is not creepy in this. I can see him being creepy as a killer in something else where he's like just playing a sorry, I'm working in reverse as like just a normal killer. But he's trying so hard to keep his voice deeper and it doesn't work. It feels like he's straining. It's kind of a similar thing that I have to the Christian Bale Batman movies because I think he plays a great Bruce Wayne, but Batman himself I don't like him as because he can't do the deep voice without sounding like whoa there and it sounds stupid. Here it's a very similar thing. Uh Another thing that I say about this film is the changing of his backstory is really interesting. Now, a lot of people bring up the I'm going to defend it to a little to an extent because people keep saying, "Oh, and nowhere in the original Nightmare on Elm Street movies is Freddy called a child molester, or was it inferred that he molested children?" That's not entirely true. In Nightmare on Elm Street 5 Dream Child, there is a newspaper that says child molester killed or whatever when a character, I think Mark, was doing research on Freddy. So it's not that it hasn't ever been inferred or hasn't even been, like I just said, explicitly stated to the audience. It's that they make it the biggest part of the movie and they feel the need to make it personal rather than just an ethereal killer that they never knew. Because the way they change it is, in the original, it was just the parents knew about this guy killing children and they torched him after didn't sign the warrant in the right spot and he got released on a technicality. Here, it's he worked at a preschool that none of them remember because they have repressed memories, and he took them down to his cave, molested them, used his claws on them, and none of them remember it. And the ones that do remember it are dead because they killed themselves in their sleep. So you've essentially completely changed the backstory of Freddy, and in in like some false sense of like trying to make it more personal or more, like make it seem like there's more personal stakes here when there aren't. because here's the thing. You want to have both the gotcha moment in the first bit of the film where it's like, oh, Katie Cassidy's not the main character. Oh, I wonder why she was lower in the cast than everybody else. Uh, even though pretty much everybody who would have even seen this would at least know about the first film and know that that bait and switch happened in the first film as well. In the first film, it worked because, well, first off, none of the actors were super well known at the time. They hadn't really been in anything. And two, the film set it up correctly. But once you see Rooney Mara's character, you know that she's going to be the main character. And also, they don't build up her character during any of the scenes before Chris is dead. So you have an underdeveloped main character, along with pretty much every other character. And it's just like, it's not fun to watch and it's not entertaining. It's not creepy, that's for fucking sure. Uh, the frickin' like the only actors I can really say tried are Katie Cassidy, Connie Britton, and Clancy Brown, even though the last two of those don't have much to do. Even if I did want to say Connie Britton, she doesn't really even do as much as Ronnie Blakely's version of the character in the first film. She's and while yes, I did have an issue with how they played that character, and in this film they do stop that a little bit. The whole like, oh, you're just being crazy. We don't believe you because we can't believe you. Um, like, but it's still they barely give her anything to do. And something weird. Can someone explain to me where Nancy's dad is? Is it ever? I don't think it was ever explained where her dad was. Because we never, I don't think we ever get a hint of her having a dad. Like, I don't know if that was a plot point. Maybe I missed it because I was really bored. But like, there's, I don't know, just a weird thing. But the nightmare sequences are very dull. The only one where I'm like thinking, okay, this is kind of interesting. There's two. There's the bit where Katie Cassidy's in her classroom. Not much happens, but like she's closing her eyes and she's like, wake up, wake up, wake up. And then everybody, it just like hard cuts to all of her classmates like falling like ash in their seats and Freddie in front of the chalkboard. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. I enjoyed that. And there's a bit later where Quentin is swimming and he like I think starts drowning, so he's technically knocked out, I guess. I don't fucking know. I don't know how the fuck you fall asleep while swimming. Um, but he sees like how Freddy was burned alive, and it's in a very similar fashion to the first film. But he sees that and then Freddy runs at him and then he wakes up. Which I was like, okay, that's at least trying something new. You told him the backstory in a show don't tell way, unlike the uh unlike the original. I'll give you props on that. Show don't tell is cool. But most of the nightmare sequences are yet again the fucking boiler room. The one that Jesse goes through is oh my God. Like the original again wasn't like the original doesn't have elaborate dream sequences, but you have this big budget, a $35 million budget, and you don't really do much with it. And it doesn't, and it shows. It shows that you wasted this money. Like Freddy vs. Jason again had a lot of issues with it, but I still had some fun watching it because it didn't take itself insanely serious. This one is both taking itself insanely serious and Freddy is spouting one-liners constantly. There's a bit where Chris's dog is dead and has marks on him, and he was like, "I was just trying to pet him," and he laughs like that a lot, which is annoying and not scary. There's a bit later where they reference Nightmare on Elm Street 4, which is one of my favorites, and like Nancy falls into this pool of blood, and uh sh he says like, "How's that for a wet dream?" And I'm like, "Okay, that's really stretching it, Freddy." And there's so many creepy ones because they've turned Freddy into just a pedo. So a lot of them revolve around that. There's one where she's wearing like a dress like she did when she was a kid and when he molested her apparently. And he said she said don't do this and he said your mouth says no but your body says yes and I'm like okay this is gross, this is disgusting and not in a good way. It's not well written. It's just going for really cheap shock value rather than the original that actually built shit up. Like Ron dying, or not Ron, excuse me, Jesse dying happens. Most of the deaths happen with none of the others knowing about it. The only connection they have is this preschool that they went to, or kindergarten. In the original, Nancy discovered Rod having been hung by Freddy as she was like trying to get to him because she knew from a dream that he was going to be killed. In this, she's called by Quentin and told, "Oh, he died in a dream in the prison, and there's a big gaping hole in his body." Kills in this suck too. They try to recreate Tina's death with Chris, and it like they try to go way too much and then way too little because in the original death she has the cuts on her body and she's dragged up the wall and everything and flipping around and then she falls on the bed and there's like looks like a massacre happened in there. In this, she's flopping around and it's just way too over the top. Like you can do a death like that and not be so over the top and it actually be creepy, but this one it's doing way too much. Um and then like the the cuts don't look amazing. Like they're practical effects, but they don't look great and there's like barely any blood. And then Jesse's death is literally just, oh, Freddy's like chasing him around the boiler room and then he sticks his claw hand through him. Boring. And the freaking okay, the one death where I was like, okay, that's a cool effect, is the first death, Dean, where he's forced to like stick a steak knife in his throat and like slit his own throat. That effect looked awesome. I love practical effects so fucking much. They look so much better than CGI. CGI will never look as good as practical gore, especially practical explosions. Um, the worst looking death for sure was Connie Britton's at the end, where Freddy's claw glove went through her eyes, and there's like really, really bad CGI blood coming out of her head, and then she gets dragged back into the mirror, and that's your jump scare ending, which sucks. But like, yeah, just overall, it's not even if you go in it for the gore or the kills or the nightmares, there's not really much there. Um, the frickin' well, it's the frickin' well, okay, you have boring characters, lackluster dream sequences, some of the worst of the series. You have pretty uninventive kills that have no real imagination. Uh, excuse me. You have, well, again, underdeveloped characters. What are you left with? Well, okay, there are some things I don't mind in this movie. Now, again, a couple of the dream sequences, I was like, okay, that's an interesting idea. The idea of micronaps, like the dream world and the real world blending together at times because you've been awake so long that you're experiencing an actual thing called micronaps. I actually was down with that idea. I thought it was interesting. Um, again, some of the gore was fine. Uh, the Again, Katie Cassidy, Connie Britton, and Clancy Brown did their jobs. I didn't mind their performances. The film looks fine for the most part. The director, uh, Samuel Bayer, this was his directorial debut. He hasn't directed anything since. He's mostly done music videos, I think. Um, his direction is fine. The only bit of like notable direction I can think of really is the bit where Nancy and Quentin are in the drugstore and she's like crawling on the floor away from Freddy through the micronaps, and it's going from like him scraping his claws on like the walls of the boiler room to stuff falling off the shelf. I thought that was at least an interesting scene. I wish more stuff like that would have happened, but overall, this is just a very, very boring, like slow, and it's not even that much longer than the original. It might be exactly the same length, 95 minutes. Nope, it's 4 minutes longer. Yeah, it feels a lot longer. But yeah, this is just a boring movie, screws up a lot of stuff within the series. The way Freddy goes out is fucking boring. Like like she slits his throat after saying "Welcome to my world, bitch," or something like that, and it's just so bland and boring, and the ending sucks. But yeah, yeah, and I'll never watch this movie again. But yeah, that was my review of A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010. If you've seen the film, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. If you have any recommendations, put them down there as well. And movie reviewer next door.